All right. Welcome back to the Believe You Are a Good Mom podcast. I'm really excited. And first, I should tell you that this podcast is not rated explicit, but what do you say? Hold on. I wrote it down. The content might not be suitable for younger listeners.
Yes.
That's what Amanda says at the beginning of all of her podcasts. Sex for Saints, people. I've got Amanda Louder with me today. Woo! Throw the confetti. It's going to be a party.
Yes.
Okay. So Amanda is a sex coach, right? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, that is what I call it.
Your title.
Well, people are like, are you like an intimacy coach or what? I'm like, well, intimacy is part of it, but really I'm a sex coach.
Yeah.
I talk about sex.
Talk about sex, baby.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about sex today. So if you have younger listeners, put your AirPods in.
Yep.
Instead. Which I don't know about you, but as soon as I get in the car and my Bluetooth instantly pulls up whatever I was listening to on my phone, my kids are always like, no, we're not coaching. We don't want to listen to coaching calls. So yeah, it's always in my AirPods. Okay. Yeah, Amanda, always. Introduce yourself for the few who don't know who you are.
Yeah. So I've been a coach for about a little over 5 years now. I love sex. I love talking about sex. I coach women, men, and couples on sex. I have a podcast, like you said, Sex for Saints. I do retreats for women and couples. On a personal note, I'm married to my husband, Kevin. I'm madly in love with him. We've been married for almost 11 years. It's a second marriage for both of us. We have 5 kids, ages 14 to 23, and we live in Salt Lake.
So fun. So we just decided this morning, because we're going on our 10-year anniversary next month.
Yeah.
And we were going to redesign my ring again, which we've done multiple times, but it's still not the way I want it. And so we were going to do that for our 10-year anniversary, but 11 is my favorite number. And I'm like, okay, good. Because I can't throw it together in a month. Like we have to do it next year so that I can find the right person who's going to redesign all the things. Anyway, so 11 is super exciting.
Yeah. I'm excited. We were going to go like on a big trip for 10, and then we decided to take our kids to France. And so that kind of got ruined. And so, but now we're still recovering from that trip to France. So I don't know that we're going to do it for 11 either, but
I know. I don't understand. I don't understand when people think that vacations are fun and relaxing and whatever. I'm like,
not when it's with kids, it's a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a vacation. So
and you have to schedule your sex retreat or your Amanda Louder retreat or some sort of retreat after the vacation with the kids. We tried that last year. We did Disney World for a week and then went on a cruise, thinking that the cruise would be like the vacation from the vacation.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of was, and I was ready to do like the LDS Life Coach retreat after that. I was like, I need my retreat after the vacation from the vacation.
Yes. Well, my retreats are not a vacation for me. I love them. I love them so much, but they are so much work. I'm exhausted.
Oh, well, yeah, when you're hosting.
Yeah. Like I literally take a week off of work after they're done because I'm like, I schedule myself a 2-hour massage the day after I get home and I take off the week because I'm just exhausted afterwards, but I love them so much.
For sure. Okay, let's get on topic. Okay, so I'm all about helping moms of young kids, right? And so let's talk about sex while you have young kids. That's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. Because clearly sex led to the kids.
Right.
So we know that there was sex involved in your marriage at some point, but now that you either are pregnant, just had a baby, they give you a solid 6 weeks that you have the excuse that you can't have sex.
Emily, come on. You should know better than that right now.
I know that's why it's in air quotes. If you're watching, you can watch on YouTube and see the air quotes.
Oh, okay.
And see Amanda's
good thing I did my hair today.
yes, that's right. I didn't. It's wet. It's drying. It's frizzy. But it'll be on YouTube. So, yes, it's not an excuse. We want to have sex. That's the idea, right? Amanda's all about helping women with that. Sex is for you. It's for the woman.
Yeah.
If that is a revolutionary idea to you, then listen in. So teach us all about that, Amanda.
Yeah. I think we grew up, whether that was in family, religious, or just in culture at large, that the men are the sexual ones and it's the women's job to accommodate. And sure, it might be fun or pleasurable for you sometimes, but like it's really about the man. And I think about it completely differently. I think that we spend the majority of our life taking care of other people, and sex is the one place where we should be taken care of. I mean, of course you should be taken care of in other places, but like really like that is where you can find peace and solace and nourishment and self-care and really, rejuvenate yourself through the sexual experience with your spouse, allowing them to take care of you in that experience instead of caretaking him, like taking care of his needs and making it all about him.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you do the laundry, you do the dishes, you don't need to do your husband.
Exactly.
So, and you take care of kids all day long. You don't need to be taking. I love how you always say that taking care is not sexy. Like if
No.
you're in the mother role, like you
Yeah.
don't need to be mothering your husband also. You're
No.
his wife, not his caretaker.
No. And biologically speaking, we're not attracted to people we take care of.
Exactly. Yep.
So if you were finding like you're having a hard time with that, it's probably because you're caretaking your husband. And you guys need to switch things up and realize that sex should be about you.
Exactly. So if you're frustrated with the God-given parts that you've been given and why it feels so unfair, then Amanda's perspective helps with that, right?
It really, yeah. I mean, because typically, again, we look at sexuality through the male lens, and males typically orgasm in 5 to 8 minutes, where it takes women a lot longer. And we think that there's something wrong with us or that we're broken because it doesn't just take 5 to 8 minutes. And really, again, I think that that's how it was divinely designed, that we have to spend the time to relax and be taken care of for half hour, 45 minutes, an hour or more, whatever it takes for you. And be nourished through that and be taken care of through that. That is part of what the process is. The problem is as women, we are not good receivers.
Yes.
Because we've been conditioned to always be the one taking care of and giving. And then we've also been conditioned to look at things through the male lens. And so we think that there's something wrong. And so we're not just letting ourselves being taken care of through sex and nourished through sex. We always find ways like, he must be so bored. He must be getting so tired. Like, do I look okay? This is taking way too long. Instead of just like, I'm just going to sit back and relax and like, just let the pleasure wash over me.
Yeah, that's so good. So in our lives that are like so jam packed,
Yeah,
that we're just running from one thing to the other, even if we're at home all day long, it's just constant bombardment with things that need to be taken care of.
Right.
Like I walk out that door and it's like, holy 400 million things just in the kitchen that need my attention.
Right.
And that's not even the children who actually need my attention. My brain just thinks that all these dishes need to be cleaned up or whatever disaster they've just done as they're playing while I'm in here, And so all day long, we're just multitasking. We're running around like a chicken with our head cut off. And that just becomes one more thing, if it becomes a thing on the to-do list to do.
Yeah.
Versus,
and go ahead. Versus
Versus what you just described. Like that does not sound at all like the experience that that
any of us
and anyone that I've ever talked to about this, like it's not. So I like how you described peace, because that's kind of a hot topic right now in the church. The prophet just gave us this whole talk about being peacemakers. There were multiple talks in conference about peace, finding peace. And we know that in the last days, like men's hearts shall fail them. There'll be a lack of peace. And we've always thought of that as like war, right? And of course there are so many wars, but there's like war within our own homes. That's my whole thing, is drop the war. Right? To find peace in our parenting. And it literally is an inside job. Like we have to find peace within ourselves in order to create peace in our families, to create peace in our communities, to create, world peace, right?
Absolutely.
But it all starts with ourselves, our own self-love and our own self-care that you just described. And if you think that sex is like not that, then rethink, right? It's possible. And it's awesome. And so instead of being mad at God for making it something that takes so long, like, why can't I just like check this off my to-do list as fast as my husband can? Then it's like, what we need in the world right now is to slow down. Like everything is so fast food, fast everything, fast results on everything, the internet, everything. if if we just time hopped back to the dial-up internet, we would die. Like if there's ever a lag on Zoom, wait, hold on, you're frozen. Like for more than half a second, we freak out, right?
Freak out.
And that's really what we need, is to slow down.
Yeah, we totally need to. And I think this was God's way of like building that into our lives. Like we literally have to. And we know, like, I mean, the Spirit comes in quiet moments when we're taking a break, you know, when we have to create that space and that peace for it to exist. But in order for desire to exist, we also have to have space. And so if we're so jam-packed with everything, we are not going to even have the capacity to have desire in our lives. Stress kills our sex drive. So, you know, like just the busyness. And, you know, we're talking to young moms here. Honestly, this is probably the hardest part of our sexual relationship, is those years when you have lots of little kids, because there is so much chaos and so much going on and so much to do in literally just keeping these kids alive. Right. And so I understand how hard it is. And if you don't make it a priority, it will not exist.
Yeah. And that is why God gave men their sex drive, to make sure that the planet perpetuates.
Yes. Yes. That's part of it. I think.
So there has to be, you know, that balance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if we're both just so busy that we don't even slow down enough to remember that, like, we have a relationship with each other also, and that's not all about the kids or about the to-do list or about, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think so many of us are like, well, we'll just deal with it later when the kids are older, you know. And I'll tell you, as a parent of teenagers, right? Like it doesn't get easier. And I find this with my clients too. It doesn't get easier when your kids are teenagers, because you're like, okay, we'll just wait till they're older. And then when they're older and they're like, and then now I have to stay up late waiting for them to get home and wanting to chat. And like, you know, and I think there's a much more physical load when they're young, but there's much more like mental load, emotional mode when they're older.
Worry and
and I mean, you no longer have control over so many things. And so, if we don't make it a priority and keep it a priority, it will just dwindle and eventually go away. And then you're like, well, we'll just take care of it when the kids are gone. Well, if you haven't nourished your relationship and your sexual relationship all along, then once the kids are gone, there's not going to be anything left to nourish. Like, you think that you're going to want to have sex after you have spent the last 15, 20 years not having it. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And to do it out of fear because of that, like, isn't, you know, that the best motivator either.
No.
And so back where we started, if sex is for us, like right now I'm on this big kick. I'm a person too. Like I have needs. I need to spend time nourishing myself and the relationship with myself. And like I said, slowing down and building in quiet time and building in meditation time and all the things, like just to take care of myself, because I'm totally burned out from taking care of everyone else. And myself is like the neglected child in the corner that everybody forgot about, you know?
Yeah. But we can't take care of everybody else if we don't take care of ourselves first, right?
Yeah. And so that's what I'm always talking about on here. Yeah. And if sex is for your husband, then it's like just one more person you have to take care of. But if it is part of that self-care to take care of yourself, it will help you be a better mom, be a better like person in the world, right? Because physiologically, literally, we're all like wound up so tight because we haven't released. Like, men have this figured out. They're like, oh, I'm stressed out. I need a release.
I actually have a really strong theory. And I mean, I don't have data I mean, I've had like anecdotal data to back it up, but I think a lot of the reason why there's so much anxiety in women is because they're not getting enough orgasms.
Yeah. Yeah. We need a release too. And it's not easy. Like the cultural programming, the good girl syndrome that we grew up with for decades. And so no, and then go. Like, no,
that doesn't make sense.
And so I love the cultural shift that's happening nowadays, you know, but we who grew up in the old culture still have the brain wiring, and from generations too. Like all of the fun
100%.
brain science and trauma work that people are figuring out nowadays, it's like it literally is generational, you
Yeah.
know? And so we're healing generational brain wiring, rewiring, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes time, and it takes a coach.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
I mean, I had to, people always ask if they don't know my story, like, have you always loved sex? I'm like, no, I hated it. I hated it for a really long time. I didn't have an orgasm for 12 years in my first marriage. So like, this is something that I've had to rewire in myself as well. And I know, like, the advice my mom gave me before I got married when I was, the ripe old age of 19, was just do it whenever he wants and it'll make things so much better.
Yeah.
Which set me up for years of issues. Right. And I don't blame my mom for that, because that was her programming.
Yeah.
I'm sure that that's what she got from her mother. Right.
Exactly.
And just like pass it down. And so I'm glad that I can make a shift in myself and not pass that on to my own girls and kids.
Yeah. And so many things. So speaking of passing it down, and since we're moms of young kids, and a lot of things like about sex either were taboo or full on scary,
Yeah.
And so then when we have a baby on the changing table who's like insistent on playing with her parts, we're like, no, like, or his,
Yeah.
like you don't touch yourself, like these programming that we have in our brains,
Yeah.
And so this work is like definitely work worth doing to reprogram the way we think about sex and even our bodies and
how you are talking to your kids about sex and their bodies. And I mean, rather than like freaking out when they're touching yourself, like, oh yeah, that feels good, doesn't it? And let's make sure we wipe off your hands. Like, that's teaching them good hygiene, right?
Yeah.
But like really teaching them their body is amazing and it was created to do amazing things. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing.
Exactly. So we talk a lot on this podcast about shame.
Yeah.
And just the shaming that goes along with sex, how we were raised is just the cycle that we want to break. Right.
Yep.
And so it's easy to be like, hey, don't shame your kids. But if like we're literally still saying that to ourselves, then it's going to be hard to, break the cycle and pass it on differently. So it really is like, it starts with us. Once we have kids or they get older and they start looking at porn or something, and we're like, we don't want to like freak out. We're like, oh, what did I read on Instagram the other day? How I should handle this, But it's like now, while they're young, is like when we need to like really be looking into our own fears and anxieties about all things in the sexual realm.
Everything. Yeah. Because I guarantee most of what you've been taught is wrong.
And whether it was taught scary. Implicitly or explicitly, right?
Right. I mean, there's so many things that we learn implicitly. Like people don't just have to say it out for us to like internalize it and feel deep shame from it. Like it can totally just be things that are implied that we don't even realize that we've taken from the situation. Like I don't like, there's so many things that happened, like in my childhood and stuff where I think my mom suffers a lot of sexual shame herself, and it got passed on in ways that I don't think she was intending, but it totally did.
Yeah.
Right. Like she didn't feel comfortable giving me my sex talk when I was 6 years old and I had an aunt who was having a baby before she was married. So it was my dad. And my 6-year-old brain was like, well, if mom can't even talk to me about this, it can't even be like present in the room, there's got to be something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that was the message she was trying to communicate at all, but that was the message that my little brain took.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we have to figure it out ourselves,
Yeah.
It's not just
100%.
like, oh, let me take this class about like how to talk to kids about sexuality. It's like, if we're comfortable with it ourselves, then that just,
then we're going, your kids are experts at reading you.
Yeah.
They learn how to emotionally regulate based on you. And so if they're constantly seeing anxiety in you, then they're going to learn how to regulate so to not cause you more anxiety.
Yeah.
Right. So even if you are saying the right words, if you don't have the emotion behind it that shows that, like, I can totally have this conversation with you and it's okay. If they sense your anxiety, and they do, because we are experts at reading each other,
Yeah.
then they will interpret that in ways that will probably not the way that you were intending.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's all sorts of interesting like trauma science now, where like,
Mhm.
and they like to call it big T trauma or little T trauma. Like it doesn't matter. The way your nervous system interpreted a situation
Yep.
defines the way you're going to look at it for the rest of forever. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Unless you change it.
Exactly. I get awareness of it.
Mhm.
And so if we're just passing on the anxieties of our foremothers about it, without getting that awareness and figuring out that, of course, she was awkward about it because of where she was coming from. But now
Yeah.
we know a lot more. We understand things differently, and we're gonna break those cycles. So
Absolutely.
anything else? How about alternatives to penetration? If
Oh,
you still want to
yeah.
build a relationship with your husband, but you just had a baby and the baby is,
Yeah. I think it's really important that we open up our definition of sex.
yeah,
For so many, sex is defined as penetration or intercourse, and sex is so much more than that. And so when we can open up our definition of sex, then it opens us up to a lot more possibilities when we either don't feel up to penetration, or penetration, like we just had a baby and we can't have penetration, right? There's so many more ways to connect lovingly. I mean, I think a lot of time what we define as foreplay, I actually think is just sex.
mhm,
Like, I mean, the flirting, the talking, the touching, like there can be so many things, and it doesn't have to involve penetration. It doesn't even have to involve orgasms, and it can still be sex. And so the more we can open that up, it's actually going to serve us better throughout our entire sexual relationship. Right now with lots of little kids, like there's probably going to be periods when you're, have a baby or nursing, or like if you were like me, I was on bed rest every time I was pregnant. And
mhm.
so there were literally like months and
Months.
months and months of pelvic rest where there was no penetration. I couldn't have an orgasm. I mean, I wasn't having orgasms anyway, so it didn't really matter, but like it's just, but that was off the table, right? But there was still ways that you can connect. And as we age and things change, like we're always going to have different aspects of our lives and our marriage and sexual relationship that are going to need to change. And so if we can open up that definition, we're going to be able to move through these different periods a lot easier. Like a lot of women, when they go through like perimenopause and menopause, experience a lot of vaginal dryness, and there's ways to combat that, but like that makes penetration hurt.
Mhm.
And so if that penetration hurts, then we've got to figure out ways to change things up, right? Men, when they get into their 40s and later, often lose the ability to either have or hold an erection. And if penetration is all you know, then that can be very disconcerting to a sexual relationship. And so learning how to have sex in ways other than penetration just makes things so much better throughout your entire relationship.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes from the conditioning too, where when we're single and we're trying to not have sex, we have to like
Yeah.
shorten the definition. It's like, oh, we're just messing around with all these things but it wasn't sex, Bishop. Like
Right.
it was just, and
Yeah.
now that they're all okay, but we had all those guilt complexes and like
Yeah.
in our single days, then it's like we have to rewire our brain that yes, this is good, because we were shaming ourselves for all those years being single.
Yep. Absolutely.
Hypothetically. Not
Hypothetically, I know.
speaking from
I met
experience
with
here.
like a whole bunch of single ladies last night, and it was so interesting hearing their experience. Like they're all probably like late 20s, early 30s, YSA, like,
Mhm.
and it was so fun to hear all of their different experiences and how they like it's so different than what I knew as when I was even their age.
Well, and then you go into the single adult world, not the young single adult world, like the over
Yeah.
31.
Yeah.
And they've all been married before, most of them,
A
lots
lot
of
of
them.
them. Yeah.
And yeah, there's just a whole slew of
Yeah.
anyway. If you are single, perchance that you're listening to this podcast, Amanda just did like an amazing interview recently on her Sex for Saints. Check out, what is it called? That you just did, the young adult.
The conditioning of young adults.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good.
So
I mean, that's good for everybody because
it
we
really
were
is
young.
because we were, yeah. Like, so it's, while it was like aimed at young adults, whether, you know, not married or newly married, I think a lot of us experience those things. So it's really good to listen and like, oh yeah, I identify with those things, and it's carrying over into my marriage and sexual relationship. And so again, we know, like, when we gain awareness around something, that's when we can start to make changes. So the more that you're aware of these like underlying belief systems and limitations that you have, then that's when we can start to really change them.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, because it's my AAA battery framework, so we get the awareness, but we have to have the acceptance piece. Like if we get the awareness and then again shame ourselves for that,
right,
then that's, you lose all the traction, right? And it goes
Exactly.
back into hiding.
Exactly.
So to understand where we're coming from, and then my favorite brain hack is just, of course, like I could go to therapy for 10 years to figure out why I feel the way I feel, or I can just accept, yeah, I feel this way. Of course I do. My brain's been through whatever it's been through.
Yeah.
It's feeding me these lies for protective reasons. And of course. And
Yeah.
now what,
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, there's always a good reason why we think the way we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And to always remind ourselves that, so that those thoughts can come up instead of hiding in the basement.
Yes.
Where we get no leverage.
Yes.
All right. Well, this is awesome. So what's new in your world that you want to tell people about?
Well, so most people that have listened to me know that I have the membership for women, which is a steal of a deal, but just a way for you women to really inexpensively come in and work on this part of their brain and their sexual relationship and learn more about themselves and how to have a good sexual relationship.
And let me just put in a plug for that, because it is a group membership, which some people might feel nervous about because you're nervous to talk about sex.
Right.
It's so good to hear other people talking about sex, because we just don't do that. Like, even with our closest sisters and friends, it's still weird.
Yeah.
And so we feel alone and we feel hidden and buried in shame because we don't even realize how normal we are, because the only thing we have to compare ourselves to is our husband, and we are not the same as him.
We are not.
So it's so good to be in a group with other women to just normalize your experience.
Yes.
And get out of that shame.
Yes, absolutely. But as part of the membership, I do offer one-on-one coaching if you're in the membership. So that's only available if you're in the membership. And then it's just an additional fee, a small additional fee for the
so you can come and listen
coaching.
to other people so that you don't feel alone, but then your own coaching can be private. So
if you want it to be
worlds.
Yeah. Really, I mean, I really encourage people to come on the group calls, but I also understand that sometimes that shame is there and present and we need to work through it. And so sometimes we feel more comfortable getting on a one-on-one call, and that's okay too. So that's part of it. I also have a small group for men. So, a lot of times I get these husbands whose wives don't want to work on themselves, or they want to work on themselves independently from him. And I help men really come from a position of strength rather than weakness when it comes to sexuality. So I think because, again, of that, a lot of that cultural conditioning, that men either go to one of two weak positions. They either go into like trying to earn sex by being like the nice guy. Like, if I do the dishes, she'll reward me with sex. Right. And ew, I mean, we're not prostitutes. Like, we don't need to be purchased with dishes for sex. Right.
Yes.
So,
so
it's like, they're trying to do what they've been taught and they're trying to be a nice guy. Right. But it's coming from a very weak position of trying to earn sex. And then you get the opposite end of the spectrum where you get these men who feel entitled to it. Like, these are my needs and you're my wife and I don't have another legitimate outlet. And so I'm expecting you to fulfill this for me.
Yeah. And again,
ew. Right. Like, neither one of those positions is attractive to us as women. But what we want is a man who comes from in an empowered position, a position of strength, where like, yes, I desire you. I want you. I want sex with you because that's important to me. And I think it's important to our relationship. And if you don't, I will be okay and I can self-soothe.
Oh. Oh.
And that's attractive.
That's so attractive.
Right. And
Because
so that's
a
what I'm
wife,
teaching the men how to do.
yes, who's over there seeped in guilt because she's
Yep.
not meeting your needs,
Yeah.
is not going to be a good experience for either of you. If
No.
sex is supposed to be connecting, that whole cycle is not anywhere close to connecting.
No.
We're
It
trying
totally
to
isn't.
control his sexual desires. We're also trying to control his emotions, where
Yep.
we don't trust that he can handle himself in either of those realms.
And sometimes he can't.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know how to do that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and again, we move into that caretaking role, which is not where we want to be and doesn't create desire and shuts down our sexuality. And so I'm working on women and helping them have more desire and truly want sex. So
Yeah.
this isn't just about like giving your husband more sex. That's not what this is about. And hopefully I've made that clear that that's not my position at all.
Mhm.
But it is helping you figure out what is keeping you from having this desire. Because I mean, you probably wouldn't have married him had you not wanted to have sex with him in the first place.
Right.
Like for the most
'Cause
part.
that's
So
the other crazy irony of
yeah.
the Mormon girl life.
Right.
Like, I want it so bad. Wait, we're married now. I don't want it anymore.
Exactly. And which is actually really normal. And there's very valid reasons for that. And so we have to uncover all of that so that your desire can naturally flourish. And then I teach the men how to come from that strength position, how to self-soothe, how to own their sexuality, but also be able to take care of themselves if they need to. And helping them just calm the crap down about sex. Right. I mean, like sometimes like when you're not getting what you think you want and desire, then we push for it even harder.
Oh yeah.
Which isn't attractive. And so it's so nuanced, but so work with the women in the membership, work with the men in small groups. And then I do take a very limited amount of couples for one-on-one coaching. So that's and then I have my retreats and all the fun
So all
stuff.
that's on Amanda Louder
.com. Yep. Nope, just AmandaLouder.com. Yep.
And all the links will be in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here, Amanda. This is so fun.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
Any last words of wisdom, or should we just say goodbye?
I think we're good.
All right. Guess we covered it.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. If you want a quick boost in any relationship, could be your husband, could be your kids, could be your neighbor, could be anybody, just your relationship with sex, right? I do free relationship boost calls. So you just show up on Zoom with someone or something in mind that you want to boost the relationship. And after just 20 minutes, you're going to feel a lot better about the situation. So dropthewar.com/appointments. Sign up for that. And I'll talk to everybody next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.